What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Eclectic Collector channel. So today I want to talk about some things that I liked that came out in 2023. And every once in a while, I like to do a video where I talk about things that aren't manga. And I will be talking about manga in this video, but I'm also going to be talking about things that aren't manga. So this is going to be kind of a mishmash of different things. So I'm going to be talking about some video games, mostly manga though, and a couple movies, some TV shows, some anime. I'm going to rattle off some of my favorite digital releases first. Then we're going to go into my, I guess, like 10 through 6 of my favorite manga of 2023. And then I'll talk about some other things. And then we'll close the video out with my top 5 favorite manga of 2023. So yeah, let's get right into this thing. I want to talk about a whole lot of stuff, and hopefully we can keep this video under an hour, since my last two videos have both been, one was almost an hour and the other one was like just over an hour. So yeah, let's jump right into this thing. All right, so we're gonna do digital right off the bat. One of my favorite things that came out this year, and I do these things on the channel. If you've never watched this channel before, I do a lot of different kinds of videos, different kinds of manga series. Like I talk about digital releases under this video type that I do called First Impressions, which is mostly manga that I've read on the Shonen Jump Viz app, and I may start talking about stuff that I read on the Shueisha app, the Manga Plus app. But I do videos called First Impressions, and when I do these videos, I like to keep them around like 15 or so minutes, and I talk about different series. All the stuff that I'm going to talk about right now are series that I've done a first impressions video about. So one of the first ones that I want to talk about today is a manga called Shoujo Null. So this is a series that I'm pretty sure has like two mangaka that actually write it. One of them writes it, the other one draws it. But Shoujo Null has pretty decent artwork. Like the story is basically like if you've ever read or seen the anime for Elfen Lied, it's basically like Elfen Lied but with androids, and it's actually not. It's not a bad story. It's one of those things where like I saw the artwork for it and it piqued my interest, and I ended up reading it. I read like 5 or so chapters before I even did a video about it, and ended up liking it quite a bit. And it's got like a Westworld kind of a vibe to it. It's basically like, androids gaining like sentience, and there's another manga in this video that's like almost the same deal, like about like androids in a sense like gaining sentience. And Shoujo Null definitely caught me by surprise because I didn't expect it to be nearly as brutal as it is. It is like extremely brutal. So if you want something that the title is kind of weird, because it's called like Shoujo Null, but shoujo for the most part is like, manga that's directed at girls, and I'm not sure like, what the actual word in Japanese means, but if it means like young woman or young girl or something, then that kind of makes sense, for the title of this manga, and then for just shoujo manga in general, which is manga that is essentially written for like young women or young girls or whatever, and then like josei manga is written for like I guess much older girls, like like upper teens and maybe 20s or whatever. But I kind of I like the title, the weird title, like Shoujo Null, like for whatever reason shoujo in this is like null and void. I don't know, it's kind of weird. I do like shoujo manga. I did a video about Sakura Saku, which I thought was a pretty good series, incredible artwork. Yeah, this manga is nothing like that. If you're like looking at like Sakura Saku and thinking like, oh, maybe it's kind of the same, it's nothing like it. I'm just saying, like I do like shoujo manga, but nah, Shoujo Null was super brutal, really dark. I've been trying to keep up with it, but it's tough, dude, because like I read so much stuff, that I try to like keep up with for this channel and whatnot. But it's actually not a bad story. Like if you want to watch the video that I did, or if you just want to check it out, if you haven't checked it out, or if you have read it, I'd love to know what you think about it. But yeah, I need to catch up with it. It definitely has the Elfen Lied thing, with like this character that gets hit, gets like head trauma and develops like a split personality, dude. But yeah, I mean, I'm probably not doing like the best job of articulating to you why you should check it out, but I think that it was a good manga. The art, like I said, is pretty dark at times, like because it goes through these moments where it's like super fun and light, and then out of nowhere it just becomes like super dark, like that meme when it's like those who know or whatever, But dude, it's good. I think it's definitely something that's worth checking out. And yeah, that's one of my favorite digital releases of 2023. All right, so this is a series that I think gets a ton of flack, but I thought it was pretty good, and that is Kagura Bachi. Kagura Bachi had a really unfortunate opening, where like people just took the meanest dump all over that story, dude. Like they just annihilated it when there was like even before it came out, like there was this whole campaign to I guess pull a like it's Morbin time, like to do that to it for whatever reason. I don't know if it was like Reddit or what, but people just wanted to tear that manga a new one. Like they thought it'd be hilarious to do that, and there's a ton of jokes about it, like Kagura billionaire or something, and there's just I don't know, dude. I don't know what it was that the internet just like banded together to make fun of this thing. It's actually like a pretty good series. Like I didn't want to jump on the hype train because there was a lot of videos, that came out and jumped on the hype train of the manga to try to like, capitalize and get views or whatever. And I kind of waited. And I waited because this isn't really a channel where like I'm trying to jump on hype topics, and if I do a video about anything, it's because like I actually want to do a video about it. Probably the reason that I've never done like a full video about like Jujutsu Kaisen or like a full video of like Naruto and things like that. Even though I don't even know if Naruto would get views now because like I don't know if that's even popular anymore because that was like my generation, and I don't know like what this generation like Gen Z is watching. Probably JJK. I don't know, but yeah, I mean I haven't done a video about Jujutsu Kaisen though. I started reading the manga, and after I finished the last season of the show, instead of continuing from where season 2 ends off, I ended up starting it back from scratch. But I will be talking about that show on this, so that's kind of a little bit of a spoiler. I will be talking about that later, about the second season that just ended, and I thought it was pretty good second season. But yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Right now we're talking about Kagura Bachi, and I thought it was a good story. I still think it's a good story. I've been keeping up with it. I'm up to whatever chapter it's up to. I think like 10 or 11. And I really like the characters. I like the lead a lot. Can't remember his name off the top of my head. Chihiro, I think his name is. Like I like him a lot. There's like this little girl named Char or something that I think is really adorable. The main antagonist, Soji, I think his name is, or something like that. As of right now, he might end up just being like the antagonist right now, and then somebody else is gonna like step up to be like the next antagonist, I guess, all the way till we get to the top of whoever ends up being like the main antagonist. But there's always this thing with like video games and TV shows where like you get one dude like right off the bat early on, and he ends up being like just one of the best villains or whatever in it, and then the villain that ends up coming up and taking the place ends up not being as interesting, like Voss in Far Cry 3, where like he was like the such a great appeal from that game, and he ends up not even being like the main like the main villain of that game, even though he was the most entertaining character in it, the most entertaining villain in it, you know what I mean? And like he ends up not even being like the final boss or whatever. And so I'm kind of hoping that it doesn't turn into one of those situations where like this dude is like so over the top and just like such an entertaining presence in this story, even though he's like the villain and he's done horrible things and he continues to do horrible things, and he just shows like in like the last like couple chapters, he kind of shows just like how over the top he is and how strong he is and whatnot, without spoiling what happens or what he does. But I feel like this is a manga that had it not had that unfortunate opening, with those people just tearing it a new one, I feel like, it's still doing well. I feel like it's doing well. I feel like it has like a pretty good presence, but because of that, because of the hype, and because of all these other things, like there comes the people that say that it's not good, that it's overrated, that this and that. And yeah, I can see it, in a sense being, seen that way because of the overexposure that it got, and people making fun of it and whatnot, and they probably still make fun of it. Like I'm sure if I went into like the comments of the Viz Shonen Jump, there's probably people, dogging on it or calling it mid or whatever. But you know what? I like it, and there's other people that enjoy it as well. And if you want to make fun of it, that's cool, dude. You're more than welcome to do whatever you want with your time. I think it's a solid story. I like the characters a lot. I did a video about it. You can watch that on the channel if you want. dude, I think it's a solid story. I know I've said that like 30 times already, but if I was gonna choose one that I would recommend, out of like the whole lot of stuff, well, this would be up there, and then another one is Goku Rakugai. So we're gonna talk about that one next. I really like Goku Rakugai. Of all the digital stuff that I'm gonna talk about, I think Goku Rakugai is probably the one that was my overall favorite, and there's a physical volume of that manga I think dropping this year in like April. I'm not sure if the other series that I've talked about will ever get a physical release, but that would be cool. I wouldn't mind, owning a physical copy of like Shoujo Null or of like Kagura Bachi or of I haven't talked about Wild Strawberry yet, but that's coming up. I'm going to talk about that story as well. Um Goku Rakugai does have a physical release coming up, I think in like April, and I think that was my favorite, story that I read of the digital bunch, that dropped this year. And that's a story that's cool, because that's a story that's cool to me because as it unfolds, like the characters, start to become, you start to see their backgrounds a lot more, and it's really cool to see that. And one of my favorite characters in it is this lady named Miss Tao. We get a little bit of her backstory. We get a little bit of different characters' backstories. For the most part, I don't think we have anything for Alma, but I may have to just go back and reread. But as far as I know, I don't think we have a lot of like, Alma's backstory and like how he ended up with Miss Tao. We just know that he is with Miss Tao, and I like the villain, like the main antagonist seems like a really cool, interesting character, and that's kind of like, kind of goes back to Kagura Bachi, with like Soji, I think is that dude's name. Soji, I can't remember. I'll like every time I mess his name up, I'll put it here somewhere. I'll put the correct name. But I think that is a solid manga, dude, and it pulled like one of the most depressing things. One of the chapters right before it went on break, and it's back now, but I think it kind of went on break again. But yeah, it went on break for a little bit, and right before it went on break, I think it was like around chapter 10 or so, it went on break, and yeah, one of like the most sad, one of the most sad things happened, just before it went on break, and I really like all the characters. There's like Beastmen in it for whatever reason, but it kind of works. It doesn't explain the reason. As far as I know, I don't think it explains the reason as to why there are Beastmen in this world. Sometimes a story will be like, oh, we closed that rift or whatever, but then the Beastmen that came through stayed. There'll be like some little random, explanation as to why there are beastmen in the world. Like a story that I just read recently, that I was reading that almost made this list, but I decided not to include it. Is Mama Yuyu. So that didn't end up making this list, but I guess I could do like an honorable mention, and just say like Mama Yuyu is something that I was reading and I've kind of abandoned because like I feel like it's just not getting much stronger. I may just continue it just for the hell of it, but it's not a bad story. It's just I don't know that it's really found its footing, and I like the idea of it, like where all these heroes exist in different, like multiverses or whatever, and like different universes, it's like all one giant multiverse, and they kind of converge in the same world. And I kind of like the opening a little bit, like the first chapter of that, like the first, like you get that, like what's essentially like a one shot, it's like 50 pages, and it tells like a kind of like an opening story that will get you invested, and I guess it shows like Shonen Jump or Shueisha or whatever, what involvement's going to be like for potential readers and whatnot. And to me, that story had like a strong start, and it slowly started to get kind of mediocre, and it's kind of like lost its footing for me, and I'm not really super interested in keeping up with it, which is unfortunate because I thought that I had like a pretty strong start, and I kind of felt the same way about Beat in Motion. I feel like Beat in Motion had like a really strong start, and as it kind of kept going, I kind of lost interest in it. But I guess there's people that like those stories, and and they like Beat in Motion. Looks like Beat in Motion is doing pretty well. So I mean, I'm not trying to hate on anything. I don't ever make videos to hate on manga, and yeah, even though like there are stories that like I've kind of since abandoned, there's things that like I've like I look forward to and like I really want to read. Like Goku Rakugai is one of those things like I really want to read. Like I jump on those chapters like as soon as they go live. Like I'm there and I'm reading it. Same with like Dan to Dan, which is one of my favorite series ever. I got that Dan to Dan poster back there, and dude, like yeah, Dan to Dan, like I finally caught up with the digital releases of Dan to Dan, and I'm not gonna spoil anything about what's going on in that story, but damn, that's all I gotta say is damn, that story just gets so good, dude. And I'm not gonna say anything. I don't want to, because I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. I like to do these videos where like I feel like anybody can watch them, because I try not to, I don't put like spoilery thumbnails, in my videos or whatever. I try not to do that. I try to like make these videos inclusive for everybody. And yeah, Goku Rakugai I think is just one of the most solid things that I've definitely read last year. And the characters are all fun, dude. And there's a dude who's introduced that's like one of the like a trainer or something that reminded me so much of Kishibe from Chainsaw Man. Dude, like he's even like a drunk, to the point where this dude's even a drunk, and it's so good, dude. It's such a good story, and I definitely highly recommend it. Like I love the characters in it. The villains are so entertaining. Like every aspect of that story. Like I don't think there's been a weak chapter of Goku Rakugai yet. So yeah, definitely. If I was gonna recommend anything, it'd probably be Goku Rakugai. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about Wild Strawberry, and then we will move on to some physical manga. I think Wild Strawberry is a pretty good manga. It's like a flower saw man, you know what I mean? It's like Chainsaw Man, but with flowers. And the title is really weird, but the artwork is incredible. I think it's some of the best artwork. As the story's gotten going, though, it's starting to like fall into like the shonen trappings that are kind of annoying. With this dude who's like, I'm gonna save everybody. Like the lead kind of turns into that, and it gets kind of monotonous. You know what I mean? It's like you've seen the same character archetype and everything, and people are surprised by how nice of a guy he is. There's always that thing, in manga where like, oh, he's a nice guy, we should all crowd around him because he's so nice and he wants to save everybody. And it is pretty brutal though. Like parts of Wild Strawberry are like super brutal, and basically like there's like this world where like plants take over. It's kind of like Annihilation in a sense, if you've ever seen that film. Like plants take over in a sense, and there's like the hive or whatever, I think it's like Tokyo Tower or something, that's where like the hive mind is for the plants. And some of the plants are like really grotesque looking, and it's actually like a really good story, outside of the fact that this dude, does become like the hero, like the protagonist, you know what I mean? Like he has that, that played out protagonist thing about him, where he says something nice or whatever, and then everybody blushes because apparently nobody's ever said anything nice to them. It's like one of those. It's kind of turning into one of those sorts of things. But that aside from that, I think it's actually like a pretty solid story, and I need to catch back up with it because I've been falling behind on reading it. And I kind of left off with it. We kind of meet other characters, and it is a solid read. I definitely do recommend checking it out. But like I said, if I was going to recommend you anything, it would probably be Goku Rakugai, just because I feel like that's probably the strongest of the digital stuff. But yeah, I think Wild Strawberries is definitely a good one, and I did a video about it if you want to check that out. If you want more, panels or more talk about, just that specific story, and not just kind of like a quick rundown, because I'm trying to keep this video under a certain amount of time. I feel like, yeah, that's definitely I think that's a good way to go. So with that, we will and the digital stuff, and now we will move on to some physical manga. Alright, so let's talk about 10 through 6 of my favorite manga of 2023. So right off the bat, at number 10, we've got Sawada and the House of Monsters. So this is like, I want to say a pretty close tie between this and Oshinoko. I almost wanted to put Oshinoko up here because I like that whole thing, like the way it introduces idol culture and like pretty much the background of idol culture and like the behind the scenes stuff, I guess if you will, of that whole thing. And I think I chose this because I like how, in a sense, how wholesome this story is. It kind of starts out where it could go one way or another, and I did a video about the series. I talked about it in I think I mentioned Sawada and the House of Monsters in a Let's Talk About video, and I really like the artwork a lot for this. I feel like Sawada and House of Monsters definitely won its place in my number 10 spot because of how gorgeous the artwork is and how wholesome the story is, and I like the characters a lot. Like it basically for the most part revolves around this girl right here named Sawada, who pretty much like her whole family is killed by like monsters, and she spends her life training, to fight monsters, and then when she's finally, of age and able to fight monsters, the war ends. Like, this war that she's been training her whole life to fight ends, so she's unable to fight monsters, but in like a strange twist of fate, she ends up befriending these dwarves that build homes for monsters. And it's really cool, man, because like it breaks down this, like, the whole architecture of it. It's kind of like they go through the whole remodeling of these places, and they do like these really cool things, really imaginative things with this universe. And I think that Hidenori Yamaji just absolutely killed it. He knocked it out of the park with this. I can't wait for Volume 2. It feels like it's been an eternity for Volume 2 to drop of the series. I don't even think Volume 2's out yet. But yeah, dude, I don't think there's been a single miss yet in this tale from this first volume. Maybe it's not going to be for everybody, because it is like super wholesome or whatever. And I know I have a lot of followers out there that are like strictly seinen, so it's probably not going to be for you if you're one of those people. But it's definitely good, dude. And I pride myself on this being a channel where like I'm open-minded enough to enjoy a lot of different stuff and not just one style of storytelling. So yeah, at number 10 we got Sawada and the House of Monsters. All right, at number 9 we've got Under Ninja. This story is just absolutely bonkers, dude. I don't know if I'll ever do a video about it, so let's talk about it here. This story is just so much fun, dude. Like, it's so outlandish. The characters are nonsensical as all hell. At one point, there's a dude wearing a bra, and it's not he's not like a trans character. He's just an old dude who put on a bra. Like, the whole thing of him putting on the bra is really weird too, because like there's like this whole backstory where like he caught this dude, this kid, I guess, like, was stealing the bra from a tenant in this apartment where like our lead character, this other girl, and this like 40-something-year-old dude, middle-aged man, all live in the same apartment. And the middle-aged man stops this kid, from like stealing a bra or whatever, and ends up, for whatever reason, I forget why, but he puts the bra on, and it becomes like a whole little segment in the story. And there's just things like that, in this story that are just so random that, don't really offer anything in terms of like, moving the story forward in a sense. They're just kind of random, but this is a story that's just replete with just random occurrences, and it works really well because, like, for the most part, like, Under Ninja is this universe in which ninjas exist in a kind of like military capacity. Like, the US government is trying to get involved with stuff going on in Japan, and then there are ninjas that for the most part, I think, like, if I'm not mistaken, I think at one point in time they were like supposedly disbanded. Like, in the public eye, like, the ninjas were disbanded, but they still, in secret run around and carry out missions for the government, but they're kind of like ghosts or whatever. They don't exist. They don't technically exist, if you will. And I thought that was really cool. And I've seen that same, sort of premise in other media. And like, I'm thinking of like The Departed. If you've ever seen The Departed with all those characters in it, like Mark Wahlberg, Matt Damon, Leonardo DiCaprio, Martin Sheen, just all those actors, like a ton of like, big name actors or whatever in this one film, which I thought is like a phenomenal film. That's kind of what it reminds me of, like, reminds me of Leonardo DiCaprio's character, where like he basically like goes in undercover and like does this whole thing, but he's not going to get any praise for it. Nobody's ever going to know that he did it or whatever. And that's kind of what it feels like with this, only this is like way more outrageous and like funny sense, I guess, if you will, like, because that story was just like brutal, where this is just like a ton of fun. And yeah, pretty much this dude right here, who is essentially a ninja, gets drafted to do a job. I guess he has to like infiltrate a school as a teenager or something, when he's like in his 20s, and he does so. This first volume, I'm pretty sure, is just like, if I remember correctly, it's just set up. Like, he hasn't really technically entered the school yet. It's just like set up or whatever. But the characters involved, like, every character that we meet so far has been like a lot of fun. They feel really fleshed out, and I think that's really cool. Because sometimes in stories, you'll meet people and then they come and go and they're interchangeable. Like whether they stick around or not, it doesn't really matter because it doesn't really offer anything to your experience. But with this, like these characters all offer something and they're all entertaining. There's even a dude who I think is like German or something. It's just, yeah, it's so random, dude. Like if you want something that's like super gory but also super random, and the German dude's a lot of fun. Everybody involved in this story was a ton of fun. So yeah, I don't want to say too much about it, because it's like, because of the fact that it is so random, a lot of the story revolves around, it being random. And the same creator from this also did I Am a Hero. So if you liked I Am a Hero, I think that you will definitely enjoy Under Ninja, because it definitely has that same sort of just weird, odd, style to it. So yeah, number 9 we've got Under Ninja. All right, at number 8 we've got Insomniac's After School. This is one of those things where like I love the artwork for the story, and I've talked about this like 100 times that I kind of can relate to this. Being out late, and I used to go out with this girl, when I was like 17 or whatever, and I used to meet her because I didn't have a car, when I was 17. I didn't have anything, so we would catch the bus to different places, and we would walk around. And I did a lot of walking when I was a teenager. I would walk all over the place. I used to drink. I don't drink anymore, but I used to drink, and when I would drink, I would, walk around with my friends and whatnot, and we'd go to places, we'd go to the movies, we'd do a lot of like just random, teenager stuff, and I really liked being out at night. That was an experience for me that I'll always cherish. It's like being young, being out, being young and dumb, and, doing a lot of things. And like now I'm in my 30s, I'm like in my mid 30s, and I don't really go out anymore. I do sometimes, but I really don't go out too much anymore. I kind of like, staying home. I did all that when I was younger. I had all my fun, and now I just kind of want to like chill. Now I'm just an old man. Now I'm just an old man who wants to stay home all the time. But I love a story like this, where like these two kids are insomniacs, and for the most part, like they each want to go up to this observatory to get some rest, and they end up essentially like bumping into each other, and each one kind of wants to claim the space as their own, and they end up sharing the space. And it's really cute because there's this one part where like they make a line, but I forgot their names. I think her name is like Magadi, if I'm not mistaken. I'll put her actual name if I screwed it up, but yeah, her name is Magadi. I can't remember what his name is. And yeah, I like the way that it's all set up. Yeah, Makoto Ojiro, knocked it out of the park with this one. I feel like this is one of those stories that will progressively just get better and become something that I think a lot of people will possibly cherish, later on down the line, if they don't already. The way that it's drawn too feels like I want to say almost whimsical, I guess, if you will. There's something really alive about it when these two kids are together, and the way that it's drawn, I feel like there's like a really unique art style that's employed with the drawings of the characters. But it is a good story, and it definitely, for it to have made my top 10, it's definitely something that I consider to be special. And for the most part, it might just be because of my own nostalgia with being a teenager and whatnot that I rated it so high. But I mean, I do enjoy the characters. I like hanging out with them, so I think that is definitely a positive as well. It doesn't have to be like the most spectacular story out. As long as I enjoyed it, either it made me feel something, it made me feel sadness, or it made me, reflect on, when I was a teenager, or any number of things, that could, benefit, that could alter the score or whatever, if you will. So yeah, that's my number 8 pick. All right, at number 7 we've got Ayashimon. This is just one of those things, dude, where it bums me out, and I've talked about this a bunch. If you watch my videos, if you're like not new here, you'll know that I always go on and on about Yuji Kaku. Ayashimon is the last thing that he did, and unfortunately it ended up being killed after like 3 volumes, and all 3 volumes are out. And I really like the artwork for the series just because I love that dude's art. He has this great way with creating characters and and doing things where it's all like super gritty. Like he did another series as well called Hell's Paradise, and if you've ever read Hell's Paradise, you'll know that like his art style is really gritty, and you never know what's gonna happen, with the characters. And this is something where he kind of toned down, I guess if you will, like the violence from how just absolutely dark it was in Hell's Paradise. Because Hell's Paradise is one that you can't read, on the Shonen Jump Viz app. You can read it on you can read it on like the website or whatever, but you can't read it on you can't read it on the Shonen Jump Viz app. But you can read Ayashimon on the Shonen Jump Viz app, and for the most part, I really like it, because there's these two characters, and there's this dude who's like essentially like a human being, and then this girl right here is like a yokai, a demon or whatever, and she is a part of a family who's, I guess like the patriarch or whatever for the family was murdered or died or whatever, and she's looking for to form a crew essentially to go and try to reinstate the family name, but then like they have to clear like the ranks, I guess if you will, of Ayashimon or demons or whatever in this world to get to the top. And it would have been really cool to see, this in a much longer format, and to see it, build up, the world, and to see this dude get a lot stronger or whatever. Because he's essentially like a One Punch Man sort of a character, like he can knock anything out just almost with one hit or with minimal hits. But he does, meet a guy that kind of becomes his match in a sense. But it also kind of speaks to Yuji Kaku's just wonderful art style and his great humor. I guess if you will, yeah, like he's got great humor. The way he draws his characters, the humor in the stories, because Hell's Paradise also had some humor, but it was also super dark. And this is also kind of dark, but it's not as dark as Hell's Paradise was. Hell's Paradise, right off the bat, like I think within like the first volume, had already killed off like half its cast. So that story is just absolutely bananas, dude. And this, I feel like he toned down that. And I'm wondering if that's not part of the reason that, this didn't do so well, is that it was like a more toned down version of his style. But I mean, I really don't know. I can't speak to it. I'm not sure. Maybe it was just because it just didn't hit with a lot of people. It didn't get the numbers that it needed for it to survive. And it's a shame, because that is a creator that I really do respect. And he worked with Tatsuki Fujimoto. He was one of his assistants, along with another dude that I also really love named Yukinobu Tatsu, who is another dude who was an assistant of Tatsuki Fujimoto's. And you can see that influence more on Yukinobu Tatsu than you do maybe on Yuji Kaku, because this dude's art is a lot more gritty. Like, I keep having it in my head, like I'm thinking like gangster films. Like that's kind of what this story in particular reminds me of. It makes me think of like a gangster film, like maybe like a Japanese gangster film, but with like demons and whatnot, and like demon yakuza, because that's what the families are, is like demon yakuza. So yeah, man, it's a shame, dude, but I still hold it in super high regard. This is my seventh pick, so yeah, if you haven't read Ayashimon, it's only 3 volumes, dude. If you want to pick them up or even rate them on like the Shonen Jump Viz app, I think at 100% think it's definitely worth it. All right, at number 6 we got Akane Banashi. This is something that I rated as high as I have because of the fact that it just absolutely caught me off guard. I was not expecting to enjoy this series nearly as much as I have, and I like this, because I've never before I read this heard of the art style. This is an exclusively Japanese art style, and I mean I don't know if maybe other people in other parts of the world do it as well, but it is essentially like inherently a Japanese art, which is called rakugo, and there's like 3 like I guess stages, of being a rakugo. The first is a zenza, I think if I'm not mistaken, which is like you're the opening act, you're like the trainee or whatever. Like I guess like in a sense would be like tattoo shop, like you're the one that you're like the gopher, you go grab all the things that the artists need or whatever. And I feel like that's kind of maybe it depends on like whatever I guess it depends on like whatever dojo or whatever you become a part of, or however, I'm not sure how they set that situation up, like what they actually call it, but I guess it depends on whatever house or whatever that you enter into. It will determine what you do, and what your role will be as being somebody that's at the bottom. And then there's like one called like Futatsume or Futatsume. I'm not sure how that would be pronounced. But pretty much that's like you're more like of an intermediate player, where like you have a name but you're not quite a master. I really don't know like a ton about it. I'm just kind of going off of like the little bit of insight that I gleaned, from kind of looking around or whatever. And then at the top of that, at the very top of the food chain is the Shin Uchi. And I'll put, each of these things that I'm talking about, I'll put, a description or something of the title. I'll put the title and like kind of an idea of like what each title is for these different players or whatever. But this story of Akane Banashi follows this character right here, Akane, whose father, this dude up here, wanted to be, a rakugo artist, and he had some interesting, sort of stories, and she watches him from when she's a little girl, and she watches him, do these plays or whatever, do these like rakugo sorts of, I guess I want to call them concerts. I don't know what else to call them, performances. She watches him do like these rakugo performances, and she falls in love with it, and she wants to see her dad, do well and to advance and to become, a bigger presence in the thing. And then something happens that ends up cutting his dream short. And in a sense of like to get like I guess revenge, if you will, this is like a different kind of a revenge story. It's a different kind of a revenge story. To get revenge for what happened to her dad, she ends up, deciding to join the same, I guess, like house or whatever that he was in, under the same master that her dad had. And she joins like a whole new group of new young dudes or whatever that are all trying to move up in that world and to, solidify their place. And I do like it. It's like kind of like a shonen in a sense, like where you see her. It would be funny to see this turn into like a battle shonen at some point, with her battling against, people from other houses to, I guess, become one of the top in this industry. But for the most part, I really like it, dude. It's super funny. I think that she's a solid main character. I think they did a great job with this character, because this is by two mangaka. One draws it, one writes it, and I think that they've done a solid job with the series, with the art, with the writing, with everything. And, bringing new light and life into this art form, I think that would be really cool, because there's no reason for art to ever have to die. As long as there's somebody that's carrying on an art form, it'll prevail. So, yeah, this is my number 6 pick, Akane Banashi. And we're back to the original setup. Well, at least this is the original setup from how we started this video. The original setup used to be, me facing this way over here, and then you would see the background, which has evolved over the years. Like if you watch some of my older videos, like some of my oldest videos, you'll see how much, like how drastically different this whole background has become. But what I want to do is I want to talk about some movies. So I kind of split up, the background a little bit just between the different things that I'm doing, so it's not like super monotonous, me just kind of sitting in the same spot the whole time. I thought that would be cool, so I hope that you are enjoying this video so far. If you are, please let me know your thoughts on anything that I've talked about so far. And let's talk about some movies. An interesting movie that I saw this year is one called Infinity Pool, which stars Alexander Skarsgård and one of my favorite actresses currently out, Mia Goth. Dude, I absolutely love this woman. I have a Pearl shirt that I sometimes wear in my videos, like just Pearl from the film, the film Pearl that she did with Ty West. And they did X together, which is a part of that universe. They did X, which I thought was okay. I didn't really see the hype. A lot of people really liked X, but I thought it was kind of okay. It's kind of like, it's one of those situations where like I thought it was okay, but other people really liked it. I liked Pearl a lot. I thought Pearl was a phenomenal film. Maybe people disagree with me. That's cool. We don't all have to agree, on the same things. But I loved Pearl. I thought Pearl was a great film, dude. And I think Mia Goth just killed it in that movie. She really showed her range, as an actor. And now there's Maxine that's coming out, which is I guess the third part of what has become, I guess, like a trilogy And what's wild is like Pearl and X, I think both came out at the same time, and I guess Maxine's gonna come out probably this year in 2024. I don't know if we've seen a trailer yet, but there's been like behind the scenes stuff, for that movie. But that's not what we're here to talk about. What we're gonna talk about right now is Infinity Pool, which is by Brandon Cronenberg, who is a solid filmmaker. He did one of my favorite films in a really long time called Possessor. If you've never seen Possessor, and if you're a person that, if you're like into like gory stuff and you have like a strong constitution, you can watch like pretty brutal films, then I highly recommend watching Possessor, but watch the unrated version of Possessor because it's like super brutal. It's like really brutal, dude. But it's such a great, like I want to call it like hard sci-fi. I don't want to say too much about Possessor because it's so easy to spoil that film. But basically, there's this woman who is like an assassin, and she assumes different identities. We'll say that. She assumes like different identities to carry out these assassinations. And as the story starts to progress, she loses a little bit of herself, and she kind of like has to remind herself of who she is by like holding on to like different totems and things like that of like the person that she is, so she doesn't completely erase her own being or whatever, but it's such a wild story, dude. And he ended up making Infinity Pool, and I wanted to see Infinity Pool because I love almost said Terrifier. There's a new Terrifier though coming out, the third one. I saw the second one last year and it was pretty brutal. I don't know if Terrifier 2 actually came out last year, if I just watched it last year, but that one was really brutal if you like just like super over the top gore. But Infinity Pool isn't like super over the top gory, though there is some gore, and it is definitely like a more brutal film. But I think that it does more of a kind of looking at class. Infinity Pool does, because it's basically like this dude who marries this woman who's like super duper rich, and I can't remember how she has money. I think she like inherits it from her father or something like that. And he's kind of like the guy that marries into it or whatever, marries into the wealth, and he's like a writer, but his books don't really do too well. And he ends up meeting Mia Goth and her husband at this sort of resort in this country that I don't think actually exists in real life, but it's kind of like I want to say kind of like Greek or something like that, or I'm not sure, like Italian, Greek, somewhere around there. And they end up getting into like an accident, and Alexander Skarsgård basically is sentenced to death, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and he's given this opportunity to pay like this crazy sum of money, and instead of dying, he'll be cloned, and his cloned will die in his stead. And it is legitimately one of the wildest things that I've seen, and Mia Goth just kills in it. Alexander Skarsgård, does a great job because he like plays this character that's like really pathetic, and I feel like he did a great job, with the character. And Mia Goth, to me, for the most part, stole the show. There's this scene with her where like Alexander Skarsgård is like trying to flee from her because he realizes she's a nutcase, and he's trying to flee from her, and it's hilarious, dude. Like she's like screaming at him while he's on the bus, and she's like, "Members of the bus."
Members of the bus! Give us the coward, James Foster, or I will come in shooting! He is a spineless worm and a bedwetter, and he'd sell his own mother for horse meat to save himself!
And then just like, I don't know, dude, it was so wild, and like, I think she did a great job, and maybe it's just because like I have such a thing for Mia Goth, but I thought that it was a great film. I thought that she did a solid job, and I feel like all the cast did a solid job. It's definitely not better than Possessor. I think Possessor is definitely Brandon Cronenberg's best film, and if you didn't know, he's the son of David Cronenberg, who's known for like things like Scanners. He also did like Videodrome, and he did The Fly, and he's done a bunch of other films. He was even in Nightbreed, I think is what that film was called. He had like a cameo or whatever in Nightbreed as like a serial killer. But yeah, I think that's definitely a film that I liked that came out last year. And if you want to see something that's like sci-fi, like I don't want to say it's like too hard sci-fi, but it is sci-fi and it is really weird. If you want to see just like a weird film starring Mia Goth, I definitely recommend checking that one out. I just really quickly want to mention two films that I watched that came out this year as well. One of them is Talk to Me, which I thought was a really solid film. It's like an independent sort of a duo, these two brothers that kind of work really well together, and I like their like Gen Z sort of humor and kind of feel for, what they're doing. And I don't know if I mentioned already, but it's Australian, and I think they did a great job with the film. The cast, I thought, was phenomenal. One of the people in the film is an actor that was in the Lord of the Rings, films. I think she's the one that says the line like "I am no man." I think that's who it was, that actress that was in Lord of the Rings. She's in this movie as well. I think she's like the mom to two of the kids in the film. Yeah, that's a good one. If you like, pretty much there's his hand and you grab the hand. And I talked about this, I think, in one of my videos that I did last year, and like things I'm looking forward to in October or whatever. Like pretty much there's his hand and you grab the hand, and when you grab the hand you say talk to me, and like you get invaded by like a spirit or whatever, and it's like a reference, like a metaphor for like doing drugs or being peer pressured into like doing drugs or whatever. And it was really well made. I thought it was a solid film, and yeah, I definitely recommend it if you want like a good kind of like I want to say almost independent, because the brothers were independent, but they got picked up by like a studio, by A24 Studios, which I think is one of the best studios out right now for like independent filmmakers. And yeah, the next one we're going to talk about is actually by an independent filmmaker, which is Beau is Afraid. So Beau is Afraid is possibly one of my favorite films that I've ever seen, ever. Dude, I love Beau is Afraid. That movie is so over the top. And like I know that's a word that I use a lot, like I use over the top a lot, but sometimes like I feel like I have no other words to quantify, just how outrageous the thing is. And that, yeah, it is just an absolutely wild film. And I think Joaquin Phoenix just kills it. Like no matter what that dude is, I mean, you can say whatever you want about him as a human being, but as an actor, he's just such a consummate actor, Like he disappears into the roles, and it's like even though you are watching Joaquin Phoenix, you don't feel like you're watching Joaquin Phoenix. And that's what I like. I like films like that. Like a case for me where like I really felt engrossed like that is The Lighthouse, which was by Robert Eggers and starred like Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe, where like the whole movie I'm just like engrossed in what's going on, and like I forget that I'm watching, Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe. That's how I felt with Beau is Afraid, where like I forget that I'm watching this dude play a character, and it feels like so legit, and where like you think he really is Beau. And it's a 3-hour film, so like if you got 3 hours that you can just sit and watch a movie, I definitely highly recommend it. It's definitely probably my favorite film of 2023, and definitely one of my favorite films that I've ever seen. I just don't always have 3 hours. I just don't always have 3 hours to sit there and watch a movie, but it's so chaotic, dude. It's just like start to finish, just absolute chaos. And you can tell like this is a project that Ari Aster wanted to make. It's like something that like he couldn't make because he didn't have the budget, or he didn't have the experience or whatever, or he didn't have the right actor for the role. But it's like once he hit like a certain plateau where like he was a big enough name, he was able to carry this project out. And it's definitely divisive. It's one of those things that's like super polarizing, where there's people that either love Beau is Afraid, which is the side of the fence that I'm on, that like I love, Beau is Afraid, and then there's people on the other side of the fence that think it's horrible, that think it's like the worst thing they've ever seen. Like a good example of this is like I saw this in theaters with a friend of mine, and I've tortured this poor man to like no end, where like I've made him go to see like just like the weirdest movies with me. Like I took him to see The Lighthouse, and he was just like, why the hell are we watching this? And I took him to see Midsummer, where he was also like, why the hell are we watching this? And then we watched Beau is Afraid, and he's just like, I don't want to go to the movies with you anymore. So that was hilarious, dude, because he legit was like, I don't want to go to the movies with you anymore after we saw Beau is Afraid together. I've taken him to just see like the most outrageous films, and dude, yeah, Beau is Afraid is definitely one of those movies where you're either gonna love it, you're gonna love the artsy style of it, how just bananas it is, or you're going to think it's like one of the worst films you've ever seen. It's just like, I don't think there's any middle ground. Either you loved it or you hated it, but I don't know if there's like really any middle ground for Beau is Afraid. But yeah, it's only one of my favorite films that I saw last year. Let's talk about Saltburn real quick. Alright, so I wasn't going to talk about any more movies, but I want to talk about this one because I think Saltburn, I just watched it like not that long ago, and it's one of those things where like that movie stayed with me. Like after I watched Saltburn, it stayed, like it burrowed itself into my skull, and like to the point where like I had a dream about that film. It just absolutely stands to the incredible performances of all the actors involved in the production of it, and the filmmaker who made it also did Promising Young Woman, which stars Carey Mulligan, and that's a film that I've also seen that is really brutal. That is a film that I think was definitely worth watching if you kind of want to see, kind of like somebody step up to people that do like that drug others, like on dates and whatnot. I don't want to say too much, about that, but this basically this woman who like uh, plays, drunk or whatever, and sees how far a guy will try to take a situation with her, only to reveal that she's not actually drunk, and just to call them out, just to say like, you were about to take advantage of me. And it's got one of the most just jarring. It has one of the most just like jarring conclusions that I came out of left field, and I was not expecting it to happen, but it's so tense when it does happen. And given that it was the same director that made Promising Young Woman, and if you've seen Promising Young Woman, Saltburn shouldn't be any surprise that this director would turn around and make Saltburn, because it feels like so in league. It feels like so in league with something that they would make, that it was like bravo, you know what I mean? Like, I watched it and I thought it was just an absolutely phenomenal film. One of my friends watched it and she hated it. She said it was she said it was one of like the worst films she's ever seen. And I feel like that's like Beau is Afraid too. It's like really divisive. Either you're gonna love it or you're gonna hate it. But I think Barry Keoghan, or however his name is pronounced. I'm probably just like butchering that dude's name. He did a phenomenal job. I think his name is like Jacob Elordi. I think that's what the guy's name is. If I messed it up, I'll put his name here somewhere. But I think they both did a great job. Rosamund Pike is in it. She killed as well. All the actors involved. Carey Mulligan's in it for a little bit. It's like a cameo character because she was in Promising Young Woman and had worked with that director before. I'd love to see them work together again. I'd love to see that director work with Carey Mulligan in a new film, where like she's the lead or something, because I think that they did a phenomenal job together in Promising Young Woman. And yeah, I mean, Saltburn, I don't know how to talk about that movie without spoiling the hell out of it, because it's so easy to spoil. But basically, like, this dude goes to stay with like the super rich kid at his family's like castle, because it's like literally a castle, and they have like a maze or whatever with like, I think like a minotaur at the center of the maze, and all these weird things happen, and it's super sexualized. And yeah, dude, I don't know how to talk about it, but it's kind of like, if you've ever seen that movie Parasite, it's kind of like that. It's kind of like Parasite meets like Call Me by Your Name in a sense, but really screwed up. It's legit one of the most screwed up movies that I've probably seen, that I probably watched last year. And I don't want to say too much about it, dude, because it's so easy to spoil the film. And I feel like it's one of those things where like, you should just kind of like, if you don't know anything about it, if maybe you've seen a trailer and the trailer didn't do like a whole lot to explain it, that's probably for the best. I feel like you should just go in blind. That's what I did. I didn't really know anything about it. I kind of watched the trailer a little bit, but didn't pay too much attention to it. And I kind of went in blind, and I loved it. But like I said, it's going to be like one of those situations like Beau is Afraid, where either you're going to love it or you're going to think it sucks, because I'm on Letterboxd, and I kind of looked at the reviews or whatever on Letterboxd, and it was kind of like divided down the middle, where it's like either people loved it or they hated it, but there was like no real middle ground. It was either like 2 stars or like 4.5 stars, and that's what I gave it. I gave it 4.5 stars. But yeah, dude, I mean, to each their own. I'd love to know what you think. Did you enjoy any of these films? What is the film that you've seen? Let me know. And let's move on to the next thing. All right, let's talk about some TV shows. Alright, so we're going to talk about Beef. Beef is a show that is on Netflix. I hope that it gets like a physical release or something, so it's not something that like, if it doesn't already have one, because I hate for it to be one of those shows that, if Netflix for whatever reason decides to take it off of Netflix, it's gone forever. Because I don't think that it deserves to be gone forever. It's something that like I haven't seen Oppenheimer yet, but I'm hoping to watch it sometime this year. And it's something that like Christopher Nolan's actually touched upon. Where like people aren't really going to the movies, and physical media is essentially like kind of dying, and it's kind of unfortunate, that that's a thing that's happening, and it's something that I feel as well, because I do own a lot of physical media. As you can see, I have all these volumes of manga. I also have a lot of books, but I don't show you all my books because you don't care about books, or maybe you do like reading books, but for the most part, this is a manga channel, and like we talk about manga. And in this video that I'm doing, I just kind of wanted to talk about different things because I like to break it up, every now and again. But I do own, I do own physical media outside of just manga. Like I also collect, vinyl records, like music records or whatever. And like I also have like a lot of movies. I have a lot of like anime, and you can kind of actually you can't see it at all. I also collect like figures and whatnot. Like I have a lot of just like physical stuff because like I am a collector, through and through. And yeah. Beef is one of those things that like I hope that doesn't just disappear one day. I hope that it has or gets a physical release if it doesn't have one. And Beef is basically just a TV show about miserable just miserable jerks. You know what I mean? Like the two leads in this, Steven Yeun, I hope I'm not mispronouncing his name, and Ali Wong just killed it. I think that they are phenomenal in this show, dude. I would love to, like, if this wasn't like a manga channel, dude, I would legit love to do a whole video about how much I love Beef. And sometimes there's these shows that come out, and for whatever reason, you just like really relate to the character, and it comes out, or if it finds you at like just like the right time in your life where you're like, damn, dude, I can feel, like I can feel this and inside of me. I can feel this, where like you just become so engrossed in the story with the characters, you become enamored or whatever. Kind of felt the same way with like BoJack Horseman. That story, when I first saw it, just blew me away, and I watched it at a time in my life where like I felt really hopeless, and to see this character who's essentially a horse, feel really hopeless, and I don't know, like I really connected with that aspect of it, where like you just feel so empty all the time. And unfortunately, that's something that I've felt, and I know I'm sure people watching this have felt the same way, where you feel really hollow inside, and you just feel really empty. And it's something that I've felt. It's something that I've felt. It's something that I feel to this day. Sometimes I just feel really awful, and I feel disgusting, with myself, and it's unfortunate. It's a real thing. It's something that we as human beings unfortunately may deal with in doses, or for some people, you deal with it all the time, relentlessly. And I feel like Beef is a good example of a show about people that are unhappy, and their unhappiness, shows itself in different kinds of ways, where they just become just like raging psychopaths. And the characters in the story, I feel like every character in the story is an extreme of something, you know what I mean? Like Ali Wong at one point is walking around with a phone, and she's pointing a gun at the phone because this dude pissed her off or whatever, and it's so hilarious. And then Steven Yeun has like this construction business or something like that, but he's also a deadbeat. He's also kind of like this. He's also a massive jerk, and he's got a brother who's like kind of a weirdo as well, and he's got a cousin that like just got out of prison, and there's like this whole dynamic with all these characters, and there's just so much like minutia, like going on in the background, and things kind of blend into each other, and different characters come back later, and it works absolutely wonderfully. Where like you have these people that are like super duper rich, which is like Ali Wong and her husband, who's like a painter or something like that, and then like on the bottom of that totem pole, you have Steven Yeun and his brother that are like kind of living, I don't want to say check to check, but I'm not really sure that that's accurate. It's been a minute since I saw the show, but I love the juxtaposition, of these two characters, arcs and whatnot, and how they mesh, and how they clash, because they do clash quite a bit. And yeah, dude, I don't want to start, I don't want to go too deep into it because I don't want to spoil it, but it happens over like the most random, thing. It happens because one character cut another character off, and that kind of starts this whole feud, which just becomes outrageously, like, yeah, it kind of like has like this outrageous crescendo that I thought was expertly done. And I loved it, dude. When like the final scene comes up, for the show, it just felt like such it just felt like the absolutely perfect way to bow tie that show. To like send it off and say, yep, that was the first season, and kind of like contained. First season. If there's ever a season two, it's gonna be with different characters, kind of like True Detective or like Fargo or whatever. But yeah, I definitely highly recommend Beef if you are an adult, because it is pretty adult. I'm always going on about how like I don't have a lot of time, and it's kind of true. So like it's like I find time here or there to watch an episode of a show or to watch this or watch that. And one of the things that I've been keeping up with for a long time is Succession, and I absolutely love Succession, dude. It is one of the best shows that just ended. The final season aired and ended last year in 2023, and those characters are like just the most awful people out, but they were just so entertaining to watch. If you've ever seen Succession, I think you might feel the same way that I do, where it's like you're just watching these really awful rich people do like try to like usurp this business from under their father, who was played by Brian Cox, who was just such a phenomenal actor, and everybody on that show did a great job. Jeremy Strong did a great job. I forgot what her name is, who played Shiv Roy. I forgot what her name is, but she did a great job. The dude who plays Roman as well. He's a Culkin. I don't want to say a name that I think it's like I forgot what his name is, but he's one of the Culkins. He did a great job. Like the supporting cast, everybody involved. The guy that plays Tom Wamsgans, that actor Matthew McFadden or Matthew Faden. I can't remember what his actual name is. And then the dude who plays like Cousin Greg. Pretty much like all these people, gathered around this patriarchal figure who runs like this massive like news conglomerate or whatever, and kind of each person wants to usurp the throne or whatever, or at least like receive the throne, like be handed the throne, have him relinquish the throne to them or whatever. And the way that the show is set up, the way that it plays out and everything was so expertly done, dude. And I think that Jesse, I can't remember his name, the dude that created the show, the showrunner, I think that he did a great job just all around, and whoever he brought in to direct and write or whatever, everybody involved, the cast, the crew, everything about that show to me was just phenomenal. From the first episode where like Roman has this check that he's gonna give this kid, for like $1 million or whatever, if he can make it to home. And I won't spoil like any of what goes on, but that scene right there to me, like kind of cemented, what the rest of the show would become. And yeah, dude, it was just so masterfully done, and the way that each character plays their part and the way that they intertwine and the new characters that are brought in and everything. I don't feel like there was ever a weak episode. I think it ran for like 5, maybe 6 seasons. I can't remember the exact, or 4 seasons if I'm not mistaken. I think it ran for 4 seasons. But just the whole way through, I don't think there was ever a weak episode. I don't think there was a weak character. Like you feel like these are real life people, even though like I know that they're actors. You've seen them in other things. Like the dude Matthew Faden or McFadden or whatever his name is was in like I think Pride and Prejudice or one of those movies. I can't remember which one, or a TV show, whatever it was. But he was in one of those. Jeremy Strong as well. He's been in a ton of stuff. Brian Cox has been in a ton of stuff as well. Just all these actors that have been in a ton of work, and such great actors, such phenomenal actors that they're so believable in these characters that you forget that you're watching actors. Like I was mentioning, like Beau is Afraid before. Like you forget you're watching actors, and it feels so legit, like you're actually watching this drama unfold in front of you. And what it is too is the way that the shots are framed and the way that the cameras move and whatever. It kind of feels like reality TV, and it's done on purpose. Like if you watch anything behind the scenes or like just interviews with the cast or the director or whatever, it's all done on purpose to look that way, to feel that way, to make it look like it's documentary style, and it's so phenomenally done, dude. And yeah, I highly recommend that show, like 100%. But right off the bat, I want to talk about Armored Core 6. I think that this is just one of the best games that came out last year. I didn't play Baldur's Gate, so I'm sorry if you're like, oh no, Baldur's Gate's the best game ever or whatever. You know what I mean? Like I haven't played it yet. I do want to. It's on my radar. I just I don't know when I'll get around to it, because like I gotta make time to do things. But I think Armored Core 6, for being this game that returned, and I used to play Armored Core. I used to play Armored Core back when. I can't remember which one it was or on what console because it was forever ago. But I remember I used to play the Armored Core demo for one of the games, and it was just so much fun, dude. Just it was just a demo, and like I would just play it over and over and over again. It was just so much fun running around in it. And this is like the first Armored Core game that I play since my childhood, and I can't remember what console it was on that I played it. But the story for this, I think, is so expertly done for a game where like you really don't see people ever. You pretty much just see the mechs, and it does get in a sense it is kind of monotonous because like you go on missions and then you go back to like the base or whatever, and then you can alter your mech however you want. The customization is really cool because you can just do all sorts of different things, and there's all sorts of different body types. You can be a tank, or you can be like a quadrupod or whatever. Like there's like all sorts of different things that you can do. You can have like dueling Gatling guns, or you can have laser rifles. You can have whatever you want. And the way that it's all set up, the way that it's all done, it feels like there's a lot of time and effort and love and whatnot that went into it. And it does feel later on, it starts to feel like a Souls game because there's a character that's introduced that became one of my favorite characters. And then I won't spoil that either, but there's a point it hits where like you meet what is essentially one of the most difficult bosses in the game, which is like I guess like the first real hurdle of Fires of Rubicon. But we're introduced to a character at that point that legit I became like super attached to, and it's designed to be that way. You know what I mean? It's like designed for you as the player to become attached to that character and whatnot. And yeah, I think that is just one of the most fun things that I've played. Super infuriating as well, because there's like a wall you essentially have to vault to beat the prologue boss, and the prologue boss is actually really hard. But once you figure out how to beat the prologue boss, it becomes a lot easier, from there, and then it gets hard again once you get to like I want to say like the mid point, into like late game. There's like two bosses almost like back to back that are ridiculously hard to beat, dude. But yeah, I mean, I have nothing but praise for this. The customization and whatnot for the mechs is so solid, dude. And like the breakdowns of it too, to like you can change like so many little minute things where like you can micromanage. And being a dude that loved like Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas and whatnot, and Fallout 4 and just Bethesda games, like I love micromanagement, and like I will micromanage the hell out of my characters, and a thing. So yeah, dude, I definitely think that this is something that if you're okay with the fact that you're probably gonna rage or whatever playing this game, then yeah, dude, I definitely recommend checking out Fires of Rubicon. All right, this game right here, Lies of P, is the bane of my existence. Like I had so much fun playing this thing, dude, but it legitimately made me want to rip the hair out of my skull. And yeah, I mean, if ever there's a game that makes you want to just smash your controller into a million pieces, this is up there, man. Like this is honestly, I think, one of the best games that I've ever played. This is like kind of like if you're a fan of Bloodborne, if you like Bloodborne, like I love Bloodborne, it's my favorite FromSoft game ever. And this has such strong, Bloodborne tendencies, like almost like BioShock 2 in a sense. Like if you like BioShock, I think you'll like this. If you like BioShock and like Bloodborne and you're a fan of like really hard games, this is super tough. Like one of the first bosses in the game is kind of a wall, that you have to, like a hurdle, an obstacle that you have to vault over. But, once you get past that, it gets a little bit more manageable until you hit another wall, which is like I want to say like the mid game. There's like a mid game boss that is just he's like a swamp creature, and that's all I'll say about that. But yeah, that right there, like it took me a while to beat that dude to the point where like I was just like I don't know if I'm gonna be able to like I don't know how much further I'm gonna be able to get, dude. I've been stuck on this dude for hours. He's like millennia, dude, in Elden Ring, it's just like one of those obstacles that is just like, dude, what in the hell? The story for Lies of P to me is phenomenal. I thought it was one of the best told stories, and you're basically like Pinocchio in like this interesting kind of like almost like I want to say Victorian sort of a setting, like much like Bloodborne, and the characters in it are solid. The story's solid. I have nothing but praise to throw at this thing. It is extremely hard. Both of these are pretty hard, but if I had to say, like, I'd say this is definitely one of the hardest games that I've played, maybe ever. I'd honestly go as far as to say, yeah, it's definitely one of the hardest games that I've played ever, and I've played a lot of, like, FromSoft games, from, like, Sekiro to Bloodborne, Dark Souls 3, Elden Ring, Dark Souls 1, Demon's Souls, and yeah, this is definitely up there to me as one of the hardest games that I've definitely ever played. But the story's so phenomenal. Like, if you don't want to play it yourself because you're not a fan of, like, super difficult games and you just like to chill or whatever, watch somebody else play it. Watch, like, a playthrough of it or something, because I think it's a really solid story. And yeah, dude, there's going to be a part 2, and there's even going to be DLC for Lies of P. So yeah, dude, it's definitely something that I think is worth checking out. Alright, so I want to talk about 2 more things, and then we're going to get right back into the manga aspect of this video, and then we'll go through my 5 favorite manga of 2023. But before we do that, let's talk about 2 anime series, and hopefully these anime series don't get this video killed, because unfortunately talking about anime is a pretty big risky thing to do on YouTube. So let's talk about Zom 100. Zom 100 is one of those things that I personally, and I think a lot of people too, can relate to, where it's like you kind of have this plan for your life, like what you want to do, where you want to go, and how you want to live your life, and then life itself gets in the way and says, nah, that ain't gonna happen. Like, no, this is how things are gonna go. You thought it was gonna go like this, but no, this is what's gonna happen. You're gonna work this job that you hate, and you're pretty much gonna become like soulless. You're pretty much going to become like a soulless machine, a soulless cog in the system, and yeah, that's about it. And then there's like a zombie apocalypse, and then all that goes out the window. And I kind of was in a situation, where I hated my job. I don't hate my job now, like I really like the job that I have now, but I was in a situation where like I hated my job, and every day that I woke up, I was just like, dude, I got to go to this hellhole. But now I'm in like a way better place, and if you're in a situation as well, where like you hate the job that you have, I hope that you can get out of that situation and maybe hopefully find something that you enjoy a lot more, because it happened for me, and I spent most of my life working jobs that I hated. So watching Zom 100 and watching this dude who's like exhausted all the time and feels like no purpose in his life. I've felt that way and I've been there, and sometimes I still kind of feel that way, and it's human to feel that way. And Zom 100 is like super relatable in that sense, and I love the characters. I love all the characters involved in it, the 2 girls and the 2 dudes, and I don't know their names off the top of my head, but you gotta think too, like the people that are making this show are probably like super overworked, so they're like these super overworked animators or whatever. They're animating a show about a dude who's like super overworked. But yeah, I loved Zom 100. I think it is one of the best anime series that I watched this year that came out. That I watched last year that came out last year or whatever. And hopefully there's a season 2. Like, I kind of want to read the manga. Like, I might jump on the app, like the Viz app or whatever, and just read the manga there. Maybe even start it back over from scratch. And overall, I really liked it. I thought it was a solid show, and I definitely look forward to hopefully there being maybe a season 2 at some point, because I definitely think it deserves it. If you've seen it, I'd love to know what you think. Do you think that it was a good show? Did you think it was okay or whatever? Another one, and this is probably my favorite anime of last year, and this is me kind of jumping on the hype train a little bit. I thought Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 was just an absolute masterpiece of a second season. Hey, you know what? If you didn't like it, or if you don't like Jujutsu Kaisen or whatever, that's cool. I thought that it was really well done, really expertly done. There were parts of it that broke my damn heart, but for the most part, it was just one thing after another, escalation after escalation after escalation after escalation. It was just like, how could this possibly get any worse? And then boom, it gets worse. I thought it was really well done, dude. I thought it was a solid season of that show, and I've watched a lot of anime, and I didn't watch like a ton of anime that came out, last year, because I just really don't watch a lot of anime anymore. Not like I used to when I was a lot younger. But yeah, I kind of watched that and like Zom 100, and then also watched like Level 1 Demon Lord and the One Room Hero, and I even watched a little bit of like Call of the Night. I watched some of that, but overall, like I really don't watch like a ton of anime anymore, not like I used to. And so yeah, like for me, I thought that was a pretty solid, piece of television, and it was one of those things I looked forward to, like when the days that it aired, like coming home and sitting down in front of my TV and just, feeling pain for like 20 minutes, just watching horrible things happen to characters that I've grown to love, for like 20 minutes, and then just being really bummed out about it afterward. But overall, like the animation was incredible, the way that everything was choreographed, the acting, the people involved in it, that animated it, that voice acted it, everything, beyond, being a TV show or whatever. I think that they knocked it out of the park. And if there's a season 3, if and when there's a season 3, I really look forward to it, because I thought that, yeah, that season 2 was just beautifully done all around, acted, animated, all of the above. Beyond, just sitting here and like being hype about, the fight scenes or whatever. Just all around, the whole package, I think, was really well done, and there were parts of it that really did break my heart, and that really bummed me out. But it doesn't take away from the overall, thing. And I mean, Chainsaw Man's the same way, dude. Chainsaw Man broke my damn heart so many times, and I still love Chainsaw Man. It's one of my favorite series ever. So I feel like if it makes you care about the characters, and then when something happens to them, it breaks your heart or whatever, then I think that is solid media. And yeah, I think that just overall, beyond, being an anime or whatever, or being, an anime that's based on a manga, I thought that Jujutsu Kaisen, to me, was definitely the best anime that I personally watched last year. I'm not saying that it's the best anime ever in any way, shape, or form. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that for me, it was my favorite anime that I watched last year, and I didn't finish Attack on Titan because I already read the manga. Like, I already read the manga. I read the whole manga for Attack on Titan, like, 2-3 years ago, probably at this point. Like, I finished the manga. Like, I finished reading the last chapter of the manga, like, the day that it went live or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, there was really no reason for me to watch the anime, or finish watching the anime, because I already knew, what was going to happen. Alright, we've done it. We made it to the end of the video, and I want to talk about my 5 favorite manga of 2023. And if you're still watching, I am extremely grateful to you for sticking around. I know this video got extremely long. I didn't mean for it to get as long as it has, but I didn't think it was going to be this long, but I just ended up talking about so much stuff, and I don't feel like I can talk about these things in like 2 or 3 words. I feel like I have to like sit here and kind of build up, what I'm talking about for each thing, and otherwise I feel like it's an incomplete video. So unfortunately, I'm going to have a ton of work to do, but I hope that it's been an experience and that you've enjoyed yourself. And let's talk about my favorite manga. Let's talk about my 5 favorite manga of 2023. Alright, so at number 5, we got Homunculus. This is something that I've known about for years, and because I've seen that, that panel with the leaf over this dude's face, and I forgot what it says, like what does it mean to be human, or whatever that quote is. And it feels so wild, that I finally got to read this. I did a video about this, and this is one of those stories that I think when you read it, like, it kind of stays with you, and you think about it after you read it. I've only read this first volume so far. Like, I have volumes 2 and 3 of these omnis. I collect whatever, like the singles of 3, 4, 5, and 6. But I've only read this first one just because I haven't really had a lot of time to delve into the other ones yet. But I will try to get around to them hopefully soon, hopefully at some point this year. Because what ends up happening is I just have so much stuff always going on, and it kind of messes with my time. But this is a creator that's also done Ichi the Killer. I've talked about this like every single time I mention him. I mention this, but yeah, he's done Ichi the Killer, and he's also done another series called Voyeur. Ichi the Killer, as far as I know, doesn't have an English translation, and Voyeur did have an English translation, but it hasn't been re-released or anything. I think it's out of print, as far as I know. And pretty much, like, this dude right here is like down on his luck, needs some money. His car is towed, and there's this like sort of strange dude that like approaches him and makes him a deal, like, you help me with what I need and I'll pay you. And he wants to do a sort of experiment where he does trepanation, drills a hole into his forehead, and it kind of opens up like, I guess, like a sixth sense, and he can see things that aren't there. Like, I guess in a sense, like people's true forms or their inner selves or whatever. And it's really cool to see because, like, at one point in time, like, he puts his hand over his eye, and when he does that, he is able to see. And when he does it, he's able to see, I guess, like, it's really wild, because there's one part where, like, he's on the street and he sees these different people, and he looks at each person, and you can kind of infer, what's going on, and you can kind of infer, what's going on with these different people based on what you see, but it's not explained. Like, the story doesn't say, like, oh yeah, this person's suffering from this person's suffering for that. It kind of leaves it up to you as the reader to, I guess, like, kind of make up your own mind about what you think is going on and with each person. But it's really wild, like, just seeing this sort of opening up of this world. And at one point they start following around, like, this dude and the guy that did the procedure start following around, like, this young woman, and her arc near is like, that's like really deep into the first volume, but her arc was really wild. It was really crazy, dude. Like, at one point her head's like upside down, and there's a lot of stuff that happens, that is just so, I guess, if you will, so there's a lot of stuff that happens in this manga that just feels like so surreal, if you will, because of how much work, just because of how much work Hideo Yamamoto put into trying to bring this thing to life. And I feel like he did a solid job. And he wrote a ton of this story. There's like, what, I think 5 omnis altogether, 5 or 6 omnis altogether of this story. So he had like, this dude had like a boundless well, of just inspiration or whatever to create this world and to bring these characters to life. Because I've enjoyed this volume, and supposedly it gets even more screwed up as it goes. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how it's going to change and evolve, and what's going to happen with this dude and with the other character as it goes, and see how much deeper, the rabbit hole goes with them. And yeah, I did a video about this. I think I mentioned that already. If you want to hear more about it, because I'm trying to tiptoe around it a little bit. It's definitely something that is going to maybe turn some people off that aren't into more strange sorts of stories. But I'm somebody that loves, that sort of stuff. Like, I love PTSD radio and, those sorts of stories that are just really jarring, kind of almost hard to read. So yeah, I think this is a good one if you are into like seinen manga. And this is my number 5 pick. All right, at number 4 we've got Boys Abyss. This is definitely one of the best things that I've read last year. I've read the first 3 volumes that are available, and each time a new volume drops, like, I just immediately jump into it, because like I can't look away from it. It's like just watching the worst thing happen, and you can't do much more than sit there and watch somebody just like, tear themselves apart, tear their whole world apart, push the people they love away, and it's just like, you just become so engrossed in it. And I've compared it to like, being like a voyeur, like sitting in somebody's window and just watching their life unfold, or even just like following someone on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and looking at all their posts, as they spill their whole life out. And there's something so unique about a story like this, because there is no like antagonist, there's no villain that is supposed to be defeated. It's literally a story where you're looking into these people's lives. It kind of reminds me of like Goodnight Boon Boon almost a little bit. And basically there's this kid who, this is by Ryo Minanami, who I think is just an absolutely incredible mangaka for carrying the story. And I think there's like 12 volumes of it or more, I'm not even sure. But to be able to just keep up that tension for 12 volumes to me is definitely something to behold. And this story is about this kid who, meets this girl right here who is an idol or whatever, or an actress, I forget what she is, but he meets her, and she's got like a really screwed up life, and she's married to a dude who's a writer. And there's like a lot of different characters that exist in this world that live in like this sort of town, and they get pulled into the whirlpool that is that kid's relationship with this woman. And I don't want to say too much about it because it's super easy to spoil the story. Yeah, like I don't know if I would ever do a video about it, or unless, I don't know, it would be kind of hard. Maybe I would do like a why you should read or something, but it would be like just tiptoeing around a lot of it because it's super easy to spoil Boys Abyss. Yeah, it's super easy to spoil the story because it is, so much wrapped around the drama of these characters' lives. And I could see this being like a film or a TV show or something, and it's something I would 100%, sit there and watch and be engrossed in the drama of these people's lives. And yeah, dude, I don't know how else to describe it. Like, you feel kind of like filthy. You feel kind of like dirty watching it unfold, but you just cannot peel your eyes away. Every time I get a volume, dude, like this day, I read this the day that I got it. I read the second volume the day that I got it. I read the third volume the day that I got it. And I got a friend of mine, my friend Justin, who I've talked about before on the channel. I bought him the first 2 volumes of it, and he like tore through them. Yeah, the first day, when he received volumes 1 and 2 that I mailed him, he read the first volume that day, and then the second day he read volume 2, and then he ended up picking up volume 3 himself, and he tore through that one as well. And he said he kind of hated himself. He said he kind of hated himself for reading it so fast. But dude, yeah, I mean, this is definitely up there. If I'm gonna recommend you something that I think is just gonna end up being one of the best stories that I've personally ever read, it's gonna be Boys Abyss, and that's why it sits at number 4. All right, my number 3 pick is Hard Gear, which I don't think comes as a surprise to anyone. I've praised the living hell out of this story, and I hate to keep saying the same things over and over again. So let me see if I can't kind of dance around, basically the same words that I always go on about it. Tsuyoshi Takaki had done a different manga before this called Black Torch, and I haven't read Black Torch yet, but I do have it, and I talked about it in my haul video that I did a couple weeks ago. But yeah, this is a story where this girl right here kind of has this like rustic, simple life. She lives with her uncle on like this farm, and they grow, I guess, like vegetables or plants or whatever together, and she sustains herself by, eating the veggies or whatever that they grow, and she's a really well-rounded sort of a character. She's really young. I think she's like 13 or 14 or something in the story. And, her uncle essentially watches her grow from, this little girl to like a young woman and whatnot, and at one point in time, her uncle is taken away from her, but there is a chance that he can be saved because her uncle is a sort of like a robot or android or something, and there is a way to save him, but they have to go on a journey. Her and this dude who's also like an android, they go on a sort of journey together to find this part. And on this journey on which they embark, the road is treacherous. There's horrible things that, are awaiting them at almost every turn. There's this anime that I watched a long time ago called Casher and Sins, which I thought was just one of the best things that I've ever seen. And it's honestly one of my favorite anime that I've ever consumed. And I think that if you like Hard Gear, but you want something that's a little more... But if you want something that's a little more like dark, I think Casher and Sins is definitely worth checking out, because that story is just miserable as all hell. It's so miserable, dude, but it's so well made. I loved it. One of my favorite anime ever, and that this journey that they embark on kind of reminds me of that a little bit. Just kind of like a retelling of like the Casher and story, which is like a story that I've known about for a long time, but they kind of redid it in like the way that Naoki Urasawa did Pluto with Adam, or Astro Boy as we know him in the West. And I think that was a really well made sort of a story, and deviation from the source material, and making it this more serious sort of a story. And I see parts of that in this. So this is more akin to things like, I've talked about this a bunch of times, but this is more akin to things like Like if you're a fan of like Tsutomu Nihei, if you've read Blam or really any yeah, I'd say more Blam than anything, or even like Biomega by Tsutomu Nihei, Nier Automata. I know I say this all the time. Like Nier Automata is another one that reminds me of like Do Android's Dream of Electric Sheep or like Blade Runner, those sorts of things like Neuromancer. But the artwork is like Tsutomu Nihei is all hell because it looks like really scratchy, in the way that he does his sort of art, and then the story is kind of like Nier Automata ish, like Blade Runner or like Do Android's Dream of Electric Sheep. But and also I love the opening of it because it has like this sort of like really rustic sort of feel where like this girl and her android uncle are living, in this like this ranch or whatever, and it kind of they're peeled away from that, just suddenly because it spends a long time, building that life up, and then it gets peeled away from there, and now we have to go on this journey where she is essentially put into peril. And yeah, dude, I really want to keep reading this thing. I loved this first volume. I think it's going to be one of my favorite manga that I've ever read. I think I've said that as well before, that I think it's going to be one of my favorite manga that I've ever read. And yeah, I stand by those words. I highly recommend checking out Heart Gear. All right, so let's do this. My number 2 favorite manga of the year, and this would have easily been my number 1 favorite manga of 2023 had it not been for my favorite manga of 2023 being translated into English. But at number 2, and justly deserved, is Soloist in a Cage. Soloist in a Cage, which I just got my hands on volume 3 for like yesterday, I think. I've read volumes 1 and 2 of this thing, and this is a 3-volume story. This has got to be one of the most heart-wrenching things that I've ever read in my life, and every time that I've picked up one of these volumes to read, I didn't know what it was about going in, so let's just say that right off the bat. I saw that artwork, and I didn't think much of it until I started reading it. And I was just like, damn. This is one of those stories that will just leave an impression on you till where you put it down and you still, think about what you read, and it stays with you, and you think about the characters, you think about Chloe, who is this character right here, and you think about the things that she has to do to survive. And there's a point in time in her life, when she was a little girl, where she was living in this like sort of prison city, and she tries to escape from the prison city with her brother, with these other people that also are escaping, and she ends up hitching a ride with them. But something happens and her little brother ends up being left behind, and she vows to come back for him, and like many years later she comes back and tries to save him. And when she comes back, she's had like this wild change, where she's like a completely different person almost. Like before, she was like the sweet young girl that liked to dance and whatnot, and would dance in front of her brother's, her little baby brother's crib. And then she comes back like a woman, hell bent on saving him. And the things she does are so brutal, dude. It is honestly one of the most brutal things I've read. I think I did a video about this, or I mentioned it in a different video, but yeah, this story is so just unflinching, and it's really hard to talk about it, without giving too much of it away. But the second volume, I think, really opens the world up, and you see this power structure, and there's like much more going on, than just Chloe trying to, get back her little brother. The art is incredible. Shiro Moriya, just to me, has created a masterpiece. I don't know how else to describe this story. To me, it is honestly, I think it's a masterpiece. I haven't read the 3rd volume yet, but once I read the 3rd volume, it'll cement, if I legitimately think that it is a masterpiece or not. But I do want to do another video about it. I want to do like a why you should read or something about Soloist in a Cage, because yeah, it's just one of those stories that, I think will always be one of my favorite stories ever. It'll probably stay up there. I don't think it'll ever be taken away from that sort of a position, because, from the get, beyond it being really brutal, I think it's such a human story, seeing this girl who's like tired and, going through these lengths, going to these wild lengths to save her little brother. It's something that is commendable, and just shows how much compassion and how much love that she has, that she would do these things and be put through these obstacles. And yeah, I'm excited to close out this story. It was only three volumes long. It was only 3 volumes long, but it is legitimately, to me, in my own opinion, I don't know if anybody shares this opinion or not. I'd love to know your thoughts about it, but I think it's a masterpiece, even though I haven't finished the final volume. But I do hope to, here in the next couple of weeks or something, because I gotta finish it. I can't, put it off for months or whatever, like I do other things. Like, I'm gonna definitely finish it so that I can, give you my honest opinion on this story at some point. But yeah, at number 2, we got Soloist in a Cage. All right, we did it. We did it. This video is massive, and I'm sorry for that. I didn't mean for it to be one of the biggest things. This is possibly at this point in time the biggest video that I've ever made. And now that we're at the end, this is a video that I put out that in like under a week of being out, it already had like over 1,000 views. And like, I really don't ever have videos go that big that fast, but it did exceptionally well, and I did not expect it to do that well. I thought it was going to peak at maybe like 200 views. Like, a lot of my videos hit 200 views and then they just sit there and it doesn't go anywhere from there. But no, this video hit like 1,000 views, and that's something that I am super grateful for, to everybody that's watched it and that's supported and that's shown me love and that's shown this channel love. I'm so grateful for you. You have no idea how much it means that you've all stuck around and watched this thing grow with me. And we're going to close this thing out right here, right now, with my favorite manga of 2023, and that is Innocent. Innocent by the master Shinichi Sakamoto is just absolutely brilliant. This is the first volume of this series, which is like a huge series. I'm not sure how many volumes there are of just like regular Innocent, and then there's like a follow-up series to Innocent called Rouge, which I guess is like part 2 or whatever. This is a huge first Omni. I don't think that this has had a weak panel like whatsoever. It's been so engrossing, dude, like to the point where like I would think about the story, I would read it at night before going to bed, and I would think about it. I'd wake up in the morning, I'd go to work, and it would stay with me, and the character Henry Sanson, this dude right here, would just stay with me. And as I was doing my review for this, like I did a bunch of research, and I looked at different things, and I looked at, Charles Henry's past, in the school that he went to. It looks like it was like a Catholic school or something like that, and I kind of like, just for whatever reason, I wanted to find out, like the actual school that he went to, just to see like how much research, just to see how much research Shinichi Sakamoto and his assistants did, and they did so much research into this time period. And I've talked about it. I talked about it in my video that I did. Archipel, the channel Archipel, has an interview with Shinichi Sakamoto where like he breaks down, writing Innocent and his whole wanting to change his style from when he did The Climber into doing Innocent. And there's just so much minutia, so much detail and whatnot that goes on in Innocent, and the way that the characters are drawn, the way the situations are brought to life, the brutality of the acts that this dude is forced to carry out. And the real life Charles Henry Sanson was like 16, 17 years old, dude, like brutally executing people. And it's something that actually stayed with the real life, Charles Henry Sanson into his later years, when he became like, I forgot how old he was when he died, but it did stay with him, and he did essentially get, like PTSD from all the people that he killed as a part of his job, because he was an executioner, and it kind of stayed with him. And this is something that I didn't mention in the video, but that I learned, through just doing research and whatnot, that this is supposed, right? Like this is something that people are saying is supposed. Nobody knows for sure if it actually happened or if it's just a story that somebody made up. That Charles Henry Sanson met Napoleon, Bonaparte. They'd met at some point, walking down a road. I think they were walking like in opposite directions. And Napoleon had, I guess, asked him if he would kill him, if it came down to it, if he were asked to. He's like, would you kill me? And apparently Charles Henry said yes. And I guess Napoleon was like, damn, dude, how can you live with yourself, doing that, saying yes. And it's pretty much, because it was a part of his job. He'd already killed like 3,000 people, executed like 3,000 people as a part of, being an executioner, being the, I guess, the executioner of Paris. I forgot what the title is, that he carries. The Monsieur of like Paris or Paris. There's so much that goes on in the pages of Innocent and the way that it's brought to life. Like there are whole panels that just feel like paintings, and that's the best way I can think to describe it. It feels like art. It feels like artwork. It feels like you're reading a it feels like you're reading portraits, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't feel like you're reading a manga. It feels like you're reading portraits. You're in a museum and you're seeing all these portraits made by people in like the 1700s or whatever, 1500s, 1600s, whenever, and you're just blown away by how amazing the art is and how much attention was paid to every little thing. And there is a lot of attention paid to so many different things, and it's wild, dude, that this guy, that Sakamoto sensei, put so much love and care and dedication into bringing this story to life, and I'm so grateful to have it. I'm grateful to Shinichi Sakamoto for writing it. I'm grateful to Dark Horse for, bringing it to us, for, releasing it in English. It's for us to read. And yeah, dude, I mean, I could sit here forever and go on and on and on about Shinichi Sakamoto and Innocent, but it's really cool, dude. Like, I love this character of Charles Henry Sanson, who takes over as essentially who takes over the family business in Paris and becomes the executioner that works under King Louis the 15th, if I'm not mistaken, into Louis the 16th, until Louis the 16th's, I guess, execution. I don't know what else to say about it. If you want to hear a lot more talk and more in-depth, talk about Innocent, you can check out my video that I did about it, because I really don't know what else to say other than what I've already said, and I don't want to start spoiling it either. But it is honestly, I think, one of the best things that I've read. I know I've said that a lot this video. I've said this is or that is one of the best things that I've ever read. And I say that as somebody who's read a lot of manga. At this point in time, dude, I've done over 100 videos on this channel. I've read a ton of manga. So when I say, I really enjoy something, I genuinely mean it. Because I've also, called other things out and said that I didn't think they were that good or whatever in the course of, making these videos over almost 3 years or whatever. So everything that I've talked about, I do believe in being a really solid story. And hopefully there are more, great things that are translated into English in 2024. I hope that you have enjoyed this video. I hope that you've enjoyed our time together. It has been one hell of an experience just talking about so many things that came out last year. And if you like this sort of a format with me just talking about a lot of different stuff, let me know in the comments. I'd love to know what you've read this year, what you've seen this year, what TV shows you watched, what anime you watched. I'd love to know what movies you watched. Whatever you got going on, feel free to let me know in the comments. This has just been an absolute journey, and I feel super lucky to have you all. And I don't know what 24 is going to bring. This is literally today is the 13th. Today's January 13th. This, as I'm sitting right here making this video, today is January 13th. And I don't know what, this year is going to bring, but I'm hoping it brings nothing but good things, and that we're able to make this a solid year for this channel and to continue to grow and to, maybe I'll try new things and see, what works or whatever. But for the most part, again, I just want to say I'm super grateful for you all. I'm super grateful that you've even, stuck around this long. It's wild, to see this channel go from 3 subs, when I first uploaded my first video to the channel, I had 3 subs, and now almost 3 years later, we're almost at 1,000. As I make this video right now, we're at 980 as of today. We're at 980. So Yeah, just thank you so much. So yeah, thank you so much for everything, for sticking around, for watching these videos, and I hope that you enjoyed yourself. I know that this thing is massive. I did not mean for it to be this massive, and it's not an ego stroke or anything that like I'm trying to make like a 2-hour video or like however long this video is. But yeah, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope that you have a solid rest of your day. Please take care of yourselves. Until next time that we meet.
Yo, it's himself, the Shadowrunners clique, aka Sleep Allah. Take you on a mental and live for one day, y'all. Sheets, y'all. Guns, y'all. Yo, who got the guns? You got the coke. Hustling them through like big punch cholesterol before he croak. Rest in peace, but I bless in peace and live to one day laying shoots. Rap over beats and tell wild stories, the mythology mystery. Choke on your own misery. Fuck them, we're the wild bunch. Yo, I asked him if this bike could punch. This shit made me lose my lunch. Bro grabbed the rocket, I said chill before he cocked it.